Do you still remember Storage Wars? That wild reality show that turned dusty lockers into treasure chests and ordinary people into TV legends? For years, fans tuned in to watch fortunes rise and fall in the blink of an eye. But behind the laughs, rivalries, and fast-talking auction chants, something darker was brewing. Today, we're digging deep into the real stories behind the stars who disappeared. The heartbreaks, the recoveries, the losses, and the quiet new lives. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear might change the way you remember Storage Wars forever. Let's start with the man who turned every auction into an adventure, the one and only Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss didn't just buy lockers, he bought moments. With his vintage gloves, slick cars, and smooth jokes, he wasn't there for the drama or the dollar signs. He was there for the thrill of discovery, for the stories hiding under dust and rust. Fans adored him not because he fought the hardest, but because he made treasure hunting fun. After 4 seasons of unforgettable one-liners and wild finds, Barry quietly disappeared from the show. No big exit, no announcement, he just stepped away. Viewers wondered why, but the truth was simple. Barry had other passions. He loved classic cars, antiques, and adventure. And maybe after years in front of cameras, he wanted something real again. But in 2019, life threw him a curve no one saw coming. While riding his motorcycle in Los Angeles, Barry was involved in a serious crash. The injuries were devastating: broken bones, internal damage, and weeks of surgeries that left him fighting just to stand again. For the man who once joked through every auction, recovery became a full-time job. Yet somehow, Barry never lost his spirit. When he finally reappeared on TV, his humor was still there, just quieter, steadier. He didn't come back to Storage Wars as a regular, maybe because he'd already found something more valuable than any locker: peace. Today, Barry lives life on his own terms. Still stylish, still smiling, just out of the spotlight. And for fans, he remains a symbol of what made Storage Wars special in the first place. Proof that joy doesn't come from what you find, but from how you live. But while Barry's exit was peaceful, the next story is anything but. Because when it comes to Dave Hester, the man who made enemies faster than he made profits, his fall from fame was sudden, shocking, and painfully real. If Storage Wars had a villain, it was Dave Hester. Sharp suit, sharper tongue, and that one word that echoed through every warehouse: "Yep!" He wasn't there to make friends, he was there to win. Every bid was a battle, every locker a war. Fans couldn't decide whether to love him or hate him, but they couldn't look away. For years, Dave thrived on that tension. He loved being the man everyone feared to challenge, the one who could outbid you by a single dollar just to prove he could. He turned confidence into a weapon, and for a while it worked. Until one night in 2018 when his world stopped moving at auction speed. Dave suffered a sudden stroke while sleeping. By morning, the man known for booming confidence couldn't even find his words. Doctors rushed him into treatment, and what followed was months of quiet rehab. Fans didn't know. Storage Wars kept rolling, but Dave was fighting a different kind of battle, learning to talk, walk, and think clearly again. When he finally spoke publicly, he didn't sound like the man who used to shout over everyone. He was slower, calmer, almost humble. The experience stripped away his bravado and left something real underneath: gratitude. Dave still works in the auction world today, but he no longer chases fame. The man who once fought for control learned what it meant to let go. For longtime fans, his story hits hard, because sometimes the loudest voice on TV has to lose everything to learn the power of silence. When Ivy Calvin showed up on Storage Wars, he carried himself like a champion, because he was one. A former arena football player and MMA fighter, Ivy brought raw energy to every auction. He sized up competitors the way a boxer reads an opponent. Fans called him the King of Palmdale because he seemed unstoppable. Confident, focused, always ready for the next score. But beneath that powerhouse persona was a family man with his own empire, a resale shop called Grandma's Attic. He turned his finds into a business that supported not just himself, but his kids, who often joined him on screen. Ivy wasn't chasing the spotlight. He was building something lasting. Then quietly, his appearances started to shrink. No scandal, no drama, just absence. Fans asked where he'd gone. Rumors spread. Was he done with the show? Had something happened? Behind the scenes, Ivy had been dealing with health issues and wanted to slow down. He focused more on his sons, mentoring them in business and life. He still dropped by an auction here and there, but the roar that once filled the room softened and became gentler, contentment. And that's what made Ivy different. He didn't need a fall or a feud to step away. He simply understood that winning doesn't always mean more. Sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when to stop fighting. Yet not everyone had the freedom to choose when to stop. Because for one man, the risk-taker known as the gambler, the fight ended in a way no one expected. Every show needs a wild card, and on Storage Wars, that was Daryl Sheets. They called him the gambler because he lived for high stakes. Where others hesitated, Daryl dove in, spending thousands on a hunch and trusting his gut every single time. He didn't always win, but when he did, it was massive. A Picasso print here, a rare comic collection there. To fans, Daryl embodied the thrill of the chase. Off camera, Daryl's energy was just as intense. He lived big, loved big, and played big. But in early 2019, that fearless lifestyle caught up to him. After a day like any other, he started feeling a strange tightness in his chest. At first, he brushed it off, until the pain exploded into something far worse. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors revealed he'd suffered a massive heart attack. For the first time, the gambler had lost a hand he couldn't bluff his way out of. He survived, barely, and recovery took months. Fans were stunned. The man who'd once sprinted through auctions now struggled to climb stairs. When Daryl finally spoke about it, he called it a wake-up call from the universe. Since then, Daryl's kept a lower profile. No cameras, no crowds, just family, quiet, and health. But his absence left a void. The show never quite felt the same without his booming laugh and bold bets. Daryl's story is more than a health scare. It's a reminder that even the biggest risk-takers sometimes have to fold. Not because they lost, but because life dealt them a new hand. And speaking of close calls, another Storage Wars duo faced a moment that nearly ended their story forever. Not a feud, not fame, but a fight for life itself. If Storage Wars had a heartbeat, it was Dan and Laura Dodson. Their lightning-fast chant and easy chemistry kept every auction alive. They weren't the loudest or the most dramatic, but they were the glue that held the chaos together. Then in 2014, everything almost stopped. One morning, Dan woke up complaining of double vision. Minutes later, he collapsed. Laura rushed him to the hospital, terrified. Doctors diagnosed him with a life-threatening brain aneurysm, something that could have taken his life in seconds if she hadn't acted fast. What followed was a blur of surgeries, recovery, and uncertainty. The same man who could call bids at lightning speed now had to relearn how to speak without fatigue. Laura never left his side. Against the odds, Dan pulled through. When he returned to Storage Wars, his humor was still there, but there was a new kind of calm behind it. Together, Dan and Laura became more than TV hosts. They became proof that love and loyalty can outbid anything, even death. Their comeback was quiet but powerful, a rare story where real life triumphed over reality TV. But not every partnership ended with healing. Because for another duo, one built on chemistry, chaos, and conflict, the story behind the scenes ended in heartbreak. In the early seasons of Storage Wars, few duos brought as much fire as Brandy Passante and Jared Schultz. They were total opposites. Brandy, sharp and strategic, Jared, impulsive and fearless. Together, they created a kind of electricity that made viewers tune in week after week. Every argument, every eye roll, every celebration felt real because it was. But behind the banter, cracks were forming. Running a business, raising 2 kids, and living life on camera took its toll. By 2020, rumors started swirling that Brandy and Jared had quietly split. Neither said much at first, but fans could feel it. The tension, the missing spark. When Brandy finally spoke out, she admitted that the relationship had become painful and complicated. Instead, she stepped away. From the spotlight, from the chaos, from the constant noise. Jared made a few appearances afterward, but something had changed. The laughter that filled their scenes was gone. Brandy focused on her kids and her own peace. Fans rallied around her, not as a TV star, but as a person finding strength after heartbreak. Jared, meanwhile, faded into the background, his once bold energy replaced by reflection. Their breakup didn't just mark the end of a relationship, it marked the end of an era. They weren't just partners. They were the emotional center of the show. And when they walked away, it felt like the heart of the auction went with them. But while Brandy and Jared's story was about emotional loss, another duo faced a very different kind of heartbreak. One that came not from conflict, but from grief. When Renee and Casey Nizota joined Storage Wars, they brought something rare, genuine joy. They weren't chasing drama, they were chasing value. Renee's booming laugh and big energy perfectly balanced Casey's calm, grounded nature. Together, they were unstoppable. But in 2023, tragedy struck. Renee's father passed away after a short battle with lung cancer. For a man who built his life around family, the loss hit deep. His usual upbeat tone turned reflective, filled with gratitude and memories. In an emotional message, Renee thanked his followers for their support and said his father's passing had put everything in perspective. Despite the grief, Renee and Casey didn't disappear. They kept working, kept smiling, but with a new sense of purpose. Their story became one of resilience, not about what they lost, but what they learned from it. Because in the world of storage wars, the Nazotas reminded everyone that real value isn't found in a locker. It's found in the people we love while we still have them. And while some stars turned their pain into purpose, others simply chose a quieter road, one without cameras, scripts, or spotlights. Not every star leaves with a headline. Some simply fade away, not because they failed, but because they found peace. Mary Pattian, the Junkster, brought creativity and charm. She didn't chase ego or profit. She chased stories. She quietly left the show to focus on her own business and personal happiness. Emily Wares, the youngest auctioneer, impressed everyone with her speed and skill. After a couple of seasons, she stepped away to focus on her new family and her music. She didn't chase fame, she chose peace. And Kenny Crossley, with his southern charm and humor, became the heartbeat of late-season episodes. He eventually stepped back to run his own ventures, choosing freedom over fame. These quiet exits might not make headlines, but they carry a powerful truth. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to keep performing, it's to walk away when your story feels complete. And maybe that's the hidden lesson behind every dusty locker and forgotten box. When you think back on Storage Wars, what do you remember first? The thrill of the bids? The rivalries? The endless treasures hidden in the dust? Maybe. But what made it unforgettable wasn't the stuff they found. It was the people who found it. Barry Weiss, the collector who traded fame for freedom. Dave Hester, the loudest man who discovered the power of silence. Ivy Calvin, who turned down the volume of success to hear the laughter of his kids. Daryl Sheets, who survived a gamble with life itself. Dan and Laura Dodson, who proved love can outbid anything. Brandy and Gerard, whose breakup showed that not every story ends with applause. Renee and Casey, who turned loss into legacy. And Mary, Emily, and Kenny, the quiet ones who reminded us that happiness doesn't need an audience. Each of them walked a different road, but they all left the same message behind. Fame fades, life doesn't. The real treasures aren't the antiques or the collectibles. They're the moments, the laughter, the risks, the lessons. Because when the lights dim and the cameras stop rolling, what's left isn't what they won. It's what they became. So which of these stories surprised you the most? Was it Barry's quiet comeback? Dave's redemption? Brandy and Jared's heartbreaking split? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed diving into the hidden stories behind your favorite TV legends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next untold story. Because sometimes the most valuable things are the ones left behind.